Hey y'all, it's Lonnie Flowers. Per usual, I took my yearly break for the summer, but you may have noticed that this year was a little different, a little abrupt. I wish I could say I planned it that way, but I had full intention of continuing the series on narcissism and then further notifying you all that I would be on my hiatus. But after spilling the contents of my heart in my last video, I figured it might be best to bow out in silence and then come back when I felt ready and have lived a little bit more. I think that's really what summer is about. I think it's a time for reflection and, for me at least, to try to answer some of the questions that are on my soul. And I'm proud to tell you that I did do some soul searching this summer. And in the coming months, I would love to share with you the things that I've found. I'd have to say that the topic that has weighed the heaviest on my heart and what I've fought tirelessly to understand in the past few months is the concept of what is known as self-sabotage. Now, before you log off, I would just like to inspire you to know that we're all guilty. Although at the beginning, maybe middle of the summer, I might have excluded myself from the mix, I realized that to different degrees, we're all similar on this one thing, and that is that we are all scared of something. Most commonly, we hear about a fear of failure, but something that's not so often addressed is having a fear of success, which I feel is definitely worth noting because sometimes it's harder to acknowledge that what we're really afraid of is actually our own strengths. Google describes self-sabotage as consciously or unconsciously engaging in behaviors that create problems for yourself and hinder you from being successful, i.e., being your best self. Simply put, self-sabotage is knowingly or unknowingly setting yourself up for failure. But who would do such a thing? Obviously, a lot of people. This is actually something to be studied. Like I said, I thought I was innocent. But one day I was pondering the subject and I got a revelation. I started to think about how sometimes, I would say a handful of times in school, if I was learning something challenging that I was going to be tested on, that I might just say whatever and stop studying, because if I didn't understand, then there was nothing that I could do that was going to change the outcome. Either I was going to fail or I was going to get just enough to pass. So in my mind, my time was better off spent otherwise than studying. Or so I thought, right? Because most times when I carried that mentality, I would realize after taking the test that had I studied more, I would have gotten a better result. I have to say, though, that there is a sweet sense of control that you feel when the outcome may not be ideal, but you also know that you didn't do everything that you could have done to get a better result. So you can tell yourself that, oh, well, I did it to myself, and, I love myself. So, if I wanted a better result, then I would have done better. I did it to myself, if you know what I mean. Which brings me to my next point. You almost always do it to yourself. If you're aware of what the right thing is and you go against it, that's called cognitive dissonance. If you're not aware, then you tend to blame the world or God for your misfortunes. Now, that's not to say that outside factors don't play a role in our lives. Yes, God gives us weights to carry to make us stronger, and the darkness puts things in our way to trip us up. But the question is, are you going to let God guide you so that you can become stronger and avoid the obstacles? Or are you going to crash out when you're inconvenienced? My example of self-sabotage is arguably on the lower end of the spectrum, because really it's an isolated incident. And I'm not here to talk about this for isolated incidents, because you can be a crash out and only crash out every once in a while still operating with a growth mindset. But someone who is self-sabotaging continues to create more and more problems for themselves because it gives them a false sense of control. Now what? You're downward spiraling. And you may feel like because you dug yourself into this pit that you can get yourself out of it. But at a certain point, you may find out that that's not true. I have a hard time processing that if a person is truly aware that they would continue to intentionally engage in behaviors that are self-destructive. So my understanding stops at the conclusion that self-awareness counteracts self-sabotage, and that if you take a long, hard look in the mirror, that you will find that you are your own worst enemy. God bless you.